Hello.
Good morning, Dr. Sonali.
Hello, Dr. Sonali. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. Do you want to do a quick technical check?
Yes.
Yeah. Please share yours.
Do you see the presentation?
Yes. It's full
Okay.
screen.
Okay.
Yeah, slides are moving too.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Do you want to switch on your video and check?
I could do that. Yeah, it works.
Yeah. So we'll be also live on YouTube.
Okay.
We have lots of registration.
Oh,
So,
great.
yes, I'll share the link on the chat also.
Okay. The other thing is, after the webinar, can I get the details of the registered candidates?
Sure, I'll share that with you.
Okay.
Dr. Sonali, request you to kindly stop sharing your screen. We'll share the flyer.
How do I stop sharing? Okay, here. Yeah.
Yeah, done. Thanks.
Hello. Thank you all for joining today. We'll begin the session shortly in the next 2 minutes. Good morning and a warm welcome to this BRBC's online Mentor Mixer program on advancing your technology with BIRAC's Innovation Funding Program, a platform where we all get to understand more about the funding opportunities at BIRAC. Without further ado, let's begin. First and foremost, we'll have an introduction to Venture Center and National Innovation Funding Landscape by Dr. Smita Kai. Dr. Kai is a manager bioincubation at Venture Center. She's been part of this team. She facilitates incubator operations by interacting with incubatees, infrastructure and facilities, creation and development of the ecosystem. She's leading bioincubation activities, Center for Biopharma Analysis and BIRAC's Regional Bioinnovation Center projects at Venture Center. She is actively involved in mentoring startups at Venture Center. She is PhD in pharmaceutical chemistry from ICT Mumbai. And prior to joining BC, she has had an academic experience of 12 years, which includes research experience of 3.6 years. Over to you, Dr. Kai.
Thank you, Meghna, for the kind introduction. Just give us 1 minute before we begin, if we can mute this up. Good morning, everyone. Can you all see my screen? The Venture Center slide?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Let's begin. People would be joining.
Smita,
Yeah.
the recording is paused.
Okay.
Just start the
Thanks,
recording.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Thank you, Anita. So welcome, everyone. I'll be giving a brief overview of Venture Center and talking briefly about the funding landscape. So Venture Center is India's leading inventive enterprises incubator. We are now 15 years old. We are registered as a non-for-profit organization. We are incorporated as Entrepreneurship Development Center. Our host institute is CSIR-NCL. We are the first incubator under CSIR. We are approved by NST, EDB and BIRAC and recognized by DSIR and DIPP. Being a non-for-profit, we are eligible for CSR funding. So these are the recognitions for our efforts on national and international platform. So this is a national award which we won in 2015. This is an international award which we won in 2018. again a national award in 2019 for the National Entrepreneurship Award. And the recent one is we were ranked #1 bio incubator by Biospectrum survey recently. Our mission at Venture Center is to nucleate and nurture. By nucleate, we mean if you are a budding entrepreneur, first generation entrepreneur, and you don't know how to start your entrepreneurial journey, at that moment, as well as by nurture, we mean if you already have a startup and at some point of time you're looking for connects or raising more funds, both the stages, we support all the technology and knowledge-based enterprises. And how do we do that is by leveraging the scientific and engineering competencies of the institutions in the region. So we are well connected with the mentor community here, and we leverage their help to help our startups. So the focus areas are all inventive enterprises and spin-offs from R&D institutions. We are sector agnostic, and these are the sectors we support: healthcare, biotech, biomed, energy, environment, sustainability, wash, engineering, electronics, manufacturing, agriculture, industrial biotechnology, food, and nutrition. So very happy to showcase this particular slide where you see the success stories. Venture Center incubatees who have introduced first in India or first in world technologies. Sharing some unique aspects about Venture Center. As I said, we are now 15 years old and we have 15 years experience. And during these 15 years, we have supported request participants to kindly stay on mute. Yeah, so we have supported 650 plus startups through our different programs. 160 plus have been on our campus as resident incubatees. We have supported 11 spin-offs. We have 50,000 square feet of incubation space, and we have created 9 resource centers here. As I said, we have a highly engaged community of 200 plus mentors, and we keep conducting events throughout the year, which provide us a good platform to network and connect with people and do peer-to-peer. So our special strengths are Intellectual Property Facilitation Center, the Technology Transfer Office, Regulatory Facilitation Center, and the Advanced Prototyping Lab. We are proud to tell that 50% of founders are women founders, 85% founders are with higher degrees from premium institutes from India and abroad, or a very rich work experience. 500 CR risk capital has been mobilized in past 6 years, and almost 1,000 CR revenue has been generated in last 6 years by our startups. So we provide high-touch mentoring to all the science and technology-focused early-stage startups. By early stage, we mean startups who are either at concept, POC, or prototype stage. 85% startups supported by us are still active. All of them are working on inventive products, and therefore we have more than 100 unique families of patents filed by our startups. So this is a complete innovation ecosystem which we have to offer at Venture Center. We provide dedicated lab spaces, infra spaces. There is mentoring by in-house mentors as well as external mentors, both offline, online. There are a lot of funding opportunities available at Venture Center in form of fellowships, POC, prototyping grants. We host 3 seed funds, CSR funds are there. We have a very good funding database and a library here at Venture Center. Funding database is online. Then we have created plug and play labs. These are shared lab facilities where there are basic equipment which would be required for, say, chemistry analysis or biology experiments for startups. We have a very advanced prototyping facility, which is well equipped with your 3D printer, laser cutter, scanner, injection molding machine, so on and so forth. Then we have 3 labs for testing and analysis, which have advanced analytical equipment. Like we have 3 LCMS with us, confocal microscope, flow cytometer. Then we have a regulatory facilitation center. So most of them are working in healthcare domain, and they need to understand the regulatory pathways, certifications, approvals which are required. So this team helps them. We also have a tech transfer office and an intellectual property facilitation center. So the tech transfer office helps in connecting technology providers and seekers and help in licensing those technologies. And intellectual property facilitation center helps in, right from prior art search to filing your IPs and understanding your patent landscape. And then we have partnerships for design and prototyping, trial manufacturing, and other activities. So these are few national programs which we are running at Venture Center with Department of Science and Technology and Department of Biotechnology. So just to give you one example, anyone who's working on a medtech idea, medtech product, Venture Center offers a whole suite of facilities for medtech product development on the campus. Say we have prototyping labs. So for proof of concept generation, we have the shared labs and the analytical labs. For making your prototype, we have the Protoshop tinkering lab. To do the trial manufacturing, sterilization and packaging, we have a ISO certified clean room facility, which is ISO class 7 and 8. And then we have RIFC regulatory team to help you understand what kind of testings and regulatory submissions would be required for your kind of product. So these are the clusters coming up at Venture Center, a quick snapshot of people who are there on our campus, startups. So here you can see the logos of the startups who are there as incubatees on the campus. So these are the different domains: biomed devices, implants, diagnostics, environment sustainability, biopharma, agriculture, secondary agriculture, bio-IT, engineering, industrial biotech. And then we have other than the in-house service providers, we have some more service providers on our campus, like IP firm, engineering firm, to help our startups. These are some of the spin-outs supported from national labs by Venture Center under our flagship program of Lab to Market. And these are our supporting partners from government, our host institute NCL, BIRAC, MSME, DST, GPT, DSIR, TDB, TIPAC. And these are our CSR partners. Just to give you a few glimpses of the facility here. So I mentioned about the prototyping facility. You can see it over here. This is the MedTech clean room, which is ISO certified. This is our mass spectrometry lab where we have 2 LCMS and the third one we have in CBA. These are the shared lab spaces: chemistry, biology, and analytical. Then there's a cell studio where we have a confocal microscope, flow cytometer, and this is our bioincubator building. This is a front view of Venture Center. We have a lot of event spaces, meeting rooms, and this is our library. So that was about Venture Center. Now moving on to the funding landscape. So quickly, I'll explain you this funding landscape, and the source here is the funding database at Venture Center. So when we are working on any idea and trying to develop a technology, we start with the first phase, that's idea. And then there are different TRL levels, technology readiness levels. So when we are at idea stage, we might not need, so here if you see this landscape, at the end you see we need say around 10 CR. So this 10 CR, we actually don't need at the beginning of this journey. Some people think that I should have a lot of money to start with my own business. That is not true. If you have a very good idea, a disruptive idea, a good idea which is feasible, has potential for commercialization, there are a lot of funding opportunities which are available for you in India. So at each stage, you might require different amount. Okay, so based on at what stage you are, you can look at the different funding opportunities which are available. So when you're at idea or proof of concept stage, you can look at some of the fellowships and grants. So the advantage there is in fellowships and grants, you are only expected to complete certain tasks as proposed as your milestones. You're not supposed to return that money to the funding agency. This is grant in aid. And as you progress in your TRL levels, once you move to prototype demonstration, and then maybe to make the functional prototypes and get to trials and approvals, that is the time, your team size will increase. You will need more resources to make those prototypes, to do more studies, involve more mentors, and you need more funds. So you can keep raising the funds as and when you move ahead in your journey of technology development. And those funds can come from, so the ones which are highlighted here in the red font are by BIRAC, and Dr. Sonali Tandon would be talking more about it. So I'll just skip that. So there are fellowships, then there are POC grants, then there are seed funds. So as Venture Center, we are hosting 4 seed funds now. and we'll be happy to share more information about it offline. Then as you move on to early stage expansion, late stage, you can see here you would require more funds, and those can come from angel, seed funding, VC, PEs, and you can always start with bootstrapping, or you can take help of 3 Fs, that is family, friends, and fools who might have a lot of money but don't know what to do with it. So if you can, convince them to collaborate and fund your idea, that would be really great. So these are different sources you can look at. And where can you look at all these sources is, so we have this funding database at Venture Center. So this is the link for that website. So once you click on this link, you will be directed to a website, and the landing page will have a blog. So this blog, we keep announcing whichever funding call is open in India, or whether they are bilateral, multilateral funding calls which are open. So all that information is updated here, and you can visit that blog and see which one is relevant to you and apply. Next thing you will find on this funding database is the list of funding schemes which are run by Venture Center. So we are implementation partner, BIG partner for BIG. So if you just click on this BIG, you will be directed to a page where you will get all the information about BIG. Similarly for Nidhi Prayas or NEEP or Seed Fund. Then we have very good, user-friendly options on this funding database website. So if you click on the browse option, there are these different options which are available. You can browse by type of funding, range of funding, stage of funding, with source of funding, or even focus area. So just to give you one example, if you click on browse by type of funding, then you will be directed to a page where you will have all these options, whether you're looking at awards, or fellowships, or equity, or grants, or debt, and what are those options available. So when you click on awards, you will be directed to a page where there will be a list of awards which you can apply to, and all the information related to that is compiled there. And there's also a search option, so you can always explore this funding database at Venture Center and get more information about the funding opportunities which are available. So that's all from my side. Please connect with us on our social media handles to get more information and updates on whatever events we conduct or the funding calls which are done. I request participants to kindly mute themselves. Thank you. And we are there. If you have any questions, please post them on the chat box, and we'll be happy to answer. So over to you, Meghna.
So thank you, Dr. Kare, for that crisp and impactful introduction. Next up, we have an overview of funding opportunities from BIRAC, a session that will be taken by Dr. Sonali Tandon. So just to give a short introduction for Dr. Tandon, she's the Senior Manager of Investment Group at BIRAC. Dr. Sonali has completed her PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research, Bangalore. Previously, she was associated with Reamatrix India Private Limited, where she was working as a project manager, and she's currently managing the BIPP scheme at BIRAC. Thank you so much, Dr. Sonali, for being a part of this session today, and over to you.
Thank you, Meghna. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. In fact, I would like to thank the entire team at Venture Center for hosting this webinar for us, so that we can reach out to the applicants who are interested in availing funding that is available at BIRAC. So in the next couple of minutes, I will cover some of the funding opportunities that exist with BIRAC, which help you to move from the proof of concept to the late stage validation of your product or the technology that you propose to take forward as your business idea. So BIRAC, as you all know, is a central agency that empowers, accelerates, and the biotech innovation ecosystem in India. It is a not-for-profit organization set up under the aegis of Department of Biotechnology. We have just completed 10 years and are still moving strong. So BIRAC, in addition to funding, also provides a lot of other opportunities for our startups. Through the various incubation centers, which are supported by BIRAC under the BioNest scheme, we provide incubation support, mentorship, both technical as well as financial, regulatory, and those are provided. Also, a lot of handholding is given to all the startups who get associated with BIRAC in their product development cycle. So BIRAC, we support a range of interested candidates, be it individuals, startups, SMEs, biotech companies, research institutions, universities, and societies through our various funding schemes. And we support you from the ideation stage to the product commercialization stage through our various funding schemes, which I would be talking about as I move along. So here again, we outline the various schemes that are operated by BIRAC, and they support you through your entire product development cycle. We have schemes like BIG, SIP, and Shrishti, which support you very early on to develop the proof of concept. Then we have the SIBRI, AIR, and CRS schemes, which fall somewhere midterm and help you to move till early stage validation. And BIPP finally provides that last push for the late stage validation. Beyond BIPP, when you're at the commercialization stage, you require funds. Then we have the product commercialization unit, or the PCP fund, where you get that last push to be able to hit the market. So before we move into the individual schemes, I would like to touch upon the TRLs. Dr. Smita had also mentioned in her talk about this. So the BIRAC had come up with the TRL definitions just to provide uniformity across the evaluations that are done through the different committees and the various schemes of BIRAC. So TRLs were initially coined by NASA, and with reference to the various thematics that are supported by BIRAC, we had derived definitions. We move from TRL 1 to 9. The closer you are to the market, the closer you are to TRL 9. Basically, between 1 and 3, you are at the proof of concept stage. 3 to 6 is when you are refining and optimizing your product and technology, followed by early stage validation. 7 to 9 is a stage where you do a multi-center trial, go to the users to get their feedback, and finally are ready to launch your product. So the various schemes in BIRAC support you through these various TRL levels so that you finally aim to reach TRL 9, where you are in the market. So for the first scheme, I'm not touching upon BIG over here, because I know Venture Center regularly updates you with respect to the guidelines, and because they are a BIG partner, they do reach out to you with the various specifics of that scheme. What I would be starting off with is the I4 scheme, which is intensifying the impact of industrial innovation. I4 supports biotechnological products and technology development by strengthening the R&D capabilities of startups and companies, or LLPs. So this program is primarily operated through 2 schemes: SIBRI, which is a Small Business Innovation Research Initiative, and BIPP, which is Biotechnology Industry in Partnership Program. So under SIBRI, we support projects up to TRL 6, wherein you are expected to complete the early stage validation for the product or the technology that you have proposed to develop. Under BIPP, we support projects which have the potential to reach TRL 7 and above. So basically, late stage validation and the user feedback part of the product development cycle is supported under BIPP. The other salient features of the I4 scheme are we have 3 calls for proposals announced every year. The call calendar is listed here, and currently we already have a call on. I will be touching upon the details of that also as I move along. And this call is open up to 31st July 2022, 5:30 p.m. So I would urge you to keep this in mind and put forth your proposals so that they can be examined and evaluated by the various committees at BIRAC. Under I4, we support proposals under various thematic areas, which include devices and diagnostics, drugs and drug delivery, energy, environment and secondary agriculture, veterinary sciences, and aquaculture. So these are basically the thematics that are supported by BIRAC. There is no ceiling with respect to the overall project cost under both BIPP as well as SIBRI schemes. However, there are small differences in the funding modalities, which I would cover as I move on. And the If there is a collaborating institute which partners with you for the product development cycle, the entire cost to the collaborating institute is borne by BIRAC. And so BIRAC has primarily two types of schemes, one under which the company is the primary applicant, and another set where the academia becomes the primary applicant. So under I4, we have companies who become a primary applicant. Academia is eligible only as a collaborator. They cannot submit a proposal independently under the I4 scheme. The royalty is applicable under all BIRAC schemes now as per the guidelines. Like I said, under I4, we have companies and LLPs which are eligible as primary applicants. And the requirement for them is that they should have minimum 51% of the shares being held by Indian citizens, and the company should be registered under the Companies Act 2013. If you are an LLP, half of the partners should be Indian citizens, and you should be registered under the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008. You are expected to have either an adequate in-house facility to be able to address the goals that you set out or the goals that you have defined in your project, or you could also choose to be incubated with a reputed incubation center anywhere in India. So the first scheme, which is SIBRI. So the SIBRI scheme was launched way back in 2005 to promote public-private partnership. This was in fact one of the first initiatives where PPP funding was encouraged. This scheme facilitates early stage research undertaken by industries and startups. And the expectation is when you apply to SIBRI, you should have the proof of concept already demonstrated, and you receive funding to reach TRL6, wherein you can optimize your product as well as do an initial clinical evaluation under the funding support. There is no ceiling with respect to the overall project cost. And here under SIBRI, up to 50 lakhs, the entire project cost is borne by BIRAC in the form of grant and aid. However, if the project cost happens to be more than 50 lakhs, then whatever is in excess of 50 lakhs gets divided equally between BIRAC and the applicant company. So for example, if the project cost is 1 CR, then 75 lakhs would be borne by BIRAC in the form of grant and aid, and the rest 25 lakhs is expected to be brought in by the applicant company as a part of their contribution to the project. So over the years, this is the impact that SIBRI has created. We have supported about 318 projects under the scheme, and about 57 products and technologies have been validated and commercialized through the support provided under SIBRI, and 46 patents had been filed. A total of 48 calls have been announced till date under this scheme. The next scheme under I4 is BIPP. This scheme was launched in 2009, and it serves as a launchpad for validating, scaling, and commercialization of high-risk innovations. Here, again, the company becomes the primary applicant, and under the BIPP scheme, the entire project cost gets equally divided between BIRAC and the applicant company. So for example, if your project cost is 1 CR, 50 lakhs will be borne by BIRAC in the form of grant in aid. Remaining 50 lakhs is expected to be brought in by the applicant company. Here again, if you have an academic partner, the entire cost of the academic partner is borne by BIRAC, and the company or the academia is not supposed to contribute to this part of their share. So this is the impact that BIPP has created over the years. We have supported about 232 projects across 55 calls that have been announced under the scheme. 63 products and technologies have been developed out of the funding support, and 37 IPs have been filed. So the royalty is applicable under both BIG as well as I4 schemes now. The royalty is payable at the rate of 5% of the net annual sales. So kindly note the royalty payments becomes applicable only after the sales of the products starts, not in the development phase. And also you pay back royalty equal to the grant in aid disbursed, and once that has been returned, the royalty clause gets null and void at that point. So I4 was a scheme where the company is the primary applicant. The next scheme is PACE, where academia becomes our primary applicant and the company here becomes the collaborator. So under PACE, which is promoting academic research conversion to enterprise, we have two major schemes, AIR, which is Academic Innovation Research, and CRS, or the Contact Research Scheme. So under AIR, the funding is provided to the academia for the development of proof of concept with or without the involvement of an industrial partner. Under CRS, so the expectation is whatever proof of concept has been developed under AIR, that should be taken up by a company or an industrial partner to be able to validate it and make it market ready. So under both these schemes, the academia becomes our primary applicant. So under AIR, we support projects with established proof of principle leading to the development of a prototype of a product or a technology, which can be later taken up by the industry for validation under the CRS scheme. So here, we do not support ideas. So it is expected that when you apply under the AIR scheme, you have the proof of principle developed. Here, there is a ceiling with respect to the duration of the project. Projects up to 24 months are supported, and only 50 lakhs is the maximum cost of the project that can get supported under the AIR scheme. The IPR here rests with the academia. BIRAC has no stake in any IP that has been generated out of the projects that are supported by BIRAC. So under AIR, academic institutions, be it public or private institutes, universities, NGOs, and research foundations are eligible to apply. You may apply individually or jointly with other academic institutions as well as industry partner, depending upon the nature of work and the scope or the expertise that you require to be brought into the project. Also, you are the academia applying to BIRAC is expected to have a proper registration or accreditation from a government body. And if you have come in with an industry partner, here again, it is expected that the industry has minimum 51% shareholding, Indian shareholding, and is registered under the Companies Act. Under CRS, the proof of concept that is developed by academia is taken up by an industry in the contract research mode and validated to be able to make it market ready. Here again, the primary applicant is the academia, and you come in with an industry partner who is ready to work with you to validate the technology that has been developed. Here, the grant is provided to both academia as well as industry partner, and there is no ceiling with respect to the project cost. The IP resides with the academia, and the industry here has the first right of refusal. BIRAC, as I mentioned before, has no stake in any IP that has been generated out of the projects that have been supported by us. For EIR, there are certain eligibility, additional eligibility criteria that have been defined. So I'll just briefly touch upon them. The PI who applies for the EIR funding, it is expected that he or she should have completed at least one extramural funded project in India, which is of minimum 3 years duration. And this should be in the same research area under which you are proposing to work under the EIR project. Also, you are expected to have authored at least one publication in a peer-reviewed journal, or you should have a patent filed in the same research area in which you are applying for funding under EIR. It is expected that you have the proof of principle at least established, so that you don't come to us with an idea which you're trying to work out under the EIR funding. It is expected that you would have demonstrated the feasibility of the idea before you apply for the EIR funding, and through this funding you develop it further to take it to a refinement stage. And also to enable you to think forward, so that you start thinking on the lines of taking this technology forward, we always encourage you to define in your proposal how at the end of the EIR project you see yourself being ready for the next stage of funding, which is under the CRS scheme. Also here, funding support is also provided for agriculture related projects to be able to validate the product or the lines that have been developed by the academia by an industry partner. Though we say that under EIR, it is not compulsory to have an industry support, but it's always good and encouraged that you partner with an industry right from the beginning, so that you understand the expectations of the industry with regard to the technology that is being developed, and you co-develop it with them so that there is a buy-in as you move along the product development cycle. Under CRS, it is expected that if you are applying under this, so independent of the fact that you have received the AIR funding from BIRAC, you are eligible to apply under CRS. And it is expected here that you have at least a proof of concept before you apply to the scheme. And you have an industry partner with you who is willing to take up the technology for validation under the CRS mode. Also, if you have already received the AIR funding and have used that funding to develop the proof of concept, it is expected that you continue with the same industrial partner with which you had come in for AIR project. But if there are reasons for which the partnership falls apart and you are able to justify the same, you can also select a new industry to be able to take the technology forward and present it accordingly to the committee for their recommendations. Also, the CRS proposal is expected to be accompanied by a commitment letter by the industry partner to exercise the first right for monetizing the product or the technology that is being developed. So this is the impact that PACE has created over the years. We have announced 26 calls under the scheme, and 145 projects have been supported, and a total of 231 beneficiaries have been catered under the scheme. We have a call for proposals currently on, and here we are inviting proposals under I4 as well as the PACE schemes of BIRAC. And like I said earlier, the proposals are invited under the following thematic areas, which are devices and diagnostics, drugs, including drug delivery and biopharmaceuticals, biosimilars, regenerative medicines, vaccines, and their clinical trials, energy, environment, and secondary agriculture, and agriculture, including veterinary sciences as well as aquaculture. So these are the basic thematic areas that get supported by BIRAC. This call for proposals is open until 31st July, 5:30 p.m. So if you have an idea which you want to take forward with BIRAC, I would urge you to please apply to us. If you require any help in the application process, feel free to write to us anytime. You can also call us. We are all working from office now. It's no more work from home. So help would be provided to you immediately so that you don't miss on the deadline that is available for the call. So the type of projects that are supported at BIRAC are mere ideas don't get supported under the I4 and the PACE schemes. We have other schemes where we encourage you to sort of come up with a novel idea and we take you forward on that. But under the I4 and PACE schemes, it is expected that you have at least a proof of principle or a proof of concept, depending upon the scheme, to be able to receive the next stage of funding. And it is expected that any process or a product or a technology that you're proposing to develop under these two schemes is sustainable, both from an economical as well as environmental point of view, and should be scalable so that it could cater to the market need at large. The TRLs, just to recap, under SIBRI, we support projects up to TRL 6. Under BIPP and CRS, we support projects up to TRL 7. And under EIR, support is provided to develop the product or technology up to at least TRL 3. What is not supported by BIRAC? This is a very important slide. We do not support exploratory research ideas without a proper proof of principle or a proof of concept. And I'm sure Smita and the team would also agree, under BIG also, though we started off supporting ideas, but now since the competition is very high, proposals will come with small amount of work to be able to validate your hypothesis, get an edge over proposals which are just out of the blue and coming to us. It is expected that you have the preliminary data in hand when you apply to us, and this data is very essential to be submitted in your application to BIRAC, so that the experts have an access when they are making their recommendations on the project. The funding that you receive under the specifically AIR, you cannot use that to merely support PhD student research or any other academic research. It has to be a translational idea which has a potential to deliver a product or a technology at the end of the funding duration. And also, if it's so BIRAC typically announces two types of calls. One is a regular call and another is a challenge call. So the current one is a regular call where you are free to choose your area of work and apply to BIRAC for funding support. However, there are other type of calls that we have, which is a specific call where we define the areas under which we invite proposals for support. And these areas are picked up from the various mission programs being run by the government or the national priorities that get defined by the government of India from time to time. And we invite proposals only in those particular areas to be able to fund them. So if it happens to be a challenge call, we also urge you to watch out for the priority areas that get defined along with the call document that gets published on BIRAC website and other leading newspapers of India. So just to touch upon and give you an idea of what are the parameters that get evaluated once your proposal is submitted to us. So there are committees that look into the proposal at various stages. I will also introduce you to the evaluation process in the subsequent slide. But what the committee looks at is the scientific merit of the proposal, how well written it is, and how much you are aware of what you are writing. The innovation level, it is expected that it's not a Me Too product, but it has an edge over all the products that are already available in the market. And the commercial potential should be very clearly spelled out so that we see it out in the market at the end of the funding duration of BIRAC. The approach and methodology should be very clearly defined to give the committee a confidence that the entire process has been thought through very well and you have the capacity to take it forward. The credentials of the investigator, this is basically to evaluate your experience in working in the area that has been defined by you and your capability of taking it forward. The regulatory issues, so it is expected that whichever product or the technology is being proposed for funding, you have at least a basic idea of the regulatory requirements with regard to that product. Though we would work with you to define the regulatory pathway for the product and technology, because we have a regulatory cell at BIRAC where every proposal gets presented and the experts advise on all the regulatory aspects that would need to be covered during the product development cycle by the applicant. So, but when you come to us, it is expected that you at least have a basic idea of what those requirements will be, so that the committee has a confidence that you have thought through enough and have done your homework well before you're coming to them for the funding support. The preliminary work, like I said earlier, is very important. Mere ideas do not get encouraged under the I4 and the PACE schemes. So whatever work you have done with regard to the idea that you're, the product or the technology that you're proposing, do submit it along with your proposal, because this becomes a very important part of your evaluation. Your past performance and track records, this is applicable for grantees who have already been funded by BIRAC. The committee is always interested to know what happened to the previous product or the technology that you had developed out of the BIRAC support. Where has it reached? Or if it has been discontinued, there should be very valid reasons of doing that. So, so the committees don't encourage you to move from one product to another just because funding is available. And the time frame, it's the timelines on all the projects that get funded by BIRAC is expected to be very aggressive, so that you hit the market at the right time and not reach there once the product or the technology becomes redundant. So the company always pressurizes you to work on the tight timelines so that you hit the market at the right point. So this is the pre-sanction evaluation process that we follow at BIRAC. So proposals are required to be submitted only online. No offline submissions are accepted by BIRAC at any point. No matter how valid that reason might be, you are expected to submit it only online. So the only way to ensure that your proposal gets evaluated is to be well in time and not wait for the last moment to submit your proposal when the calls are on. So the first committee that looks at the proposal is the area review panel. So we have 4 committees depending upon the thematic areas. So one committee looks at devices and diagnostics, other at drug related projects, third at energy and environment related projects, and the fourth as an agriculture committee. So we have subject area experts who review all the projects that are submitted and give their recommendations with respect to the projects going to the next level of evaluation, wherein the applicant is called to come and present their proposal to the technical expert committee or the TEC of BIRAC, which was earlier chaired by Dr. Padmanabhan, but now he chose to keep himself away from the chairmanship. So Dr. Batra is now heading this technical expert committee. So, the first presentation is the area review panel, followed by the presentation by the applicant to the technical expert committee, and the proposals that get shortlisted from the second round go for a site visit round, wherein so earlier we used to have physical site visits, but now it's happening in the online mode, wherein you have two technical experts along with a BIRAC facilitator looking more closely at your technology and defining the milestones and the deliverables of the funding support that you are requesting. At this stage, we also have a financial due diligence wherein BIRAC empaneled CA examines the financials of the company and submits a due report to BIRAC. So all this gets presented to the technical expert committee, who in turn make their final recommendations to be able to place the project for the apex committee, which finally gives a go-ahead for funding the particular project, which is sanctioned by BIRAC. So once your project is cleared by the apex committee, you enter into the grantee letter agreement or the GLA with BIRAC, and you could start your work accordingly. So once the project gets cleared by apex and you receive your first tranche, you enter into the ongoing phase, where every project that gets supported by BIRAC has two subject experts associated with it, who monitor your project on a 6-monthly basis. So and make their recommendations, give guidance to you, and in case you require any specific help, that is also provided by these experts during the project development cycle. So a few important aspects that you should keep in mind before submitting the proposal to BIRAC. Read the scheme document very carefully so that you know which scheme you are eligible to support. Though we transfer the projects accordingly, but it's good to know that you are aware of which scheme you are eligible for. So please read the scheme documents to ensure that you submit your proposal into the right scheme. The selection of the research problem is very important. It is expected that you would have done a thorough market or survey to be able to identify the gap that you're trying to address. If it's an import substitute, you should be able to define your competitors well. How does your technology or the product that you're proposing stand out from what's there already in the market? So that homework should have been done by the applicant before you apply to us. The commercial viability of the project should be ensured so that it has the potential of going out into the market. You should be aware of the various IPs that exist in the area and make sure that you don't infringe on any of the IPs that exist. You should be aware of the regulatory aspects related to your product and technology. Your technical, the strength of your team becomes very important, so that to ensure that you have the right expertise to be able to carry forward the project. Your selection of collaborator also is very essential. This is specifically true for the AIR projects where you are trying to come in with an industry partner. Please ensure that you select the right industry partner who is able to guide you and take your technology forward going along the project. Your research lab should either be very well equipped to be able to carry out the work, or you should be incubated in an incubation space. If you're expected to get in your contribution as a part of the project, which happens in the case of BIPP as well as the SIBRI, where the project cost is above 50 lakhs, you should be able to specify the source of funding from where you intend to get in your contribution, so that the project does not get halted because of financial reasons along its cycle. Please watch out for the deadline for submission of proposals so that you don't wait for the last minute to submit your proposal to us. So this is what we had for iPhone and PACE, where the call for proposals is on, and we would urge you to submit your research ideas to us so that we could help you and become a partner in your product development journey. In addition to funding support, like I said earlier, we provide a lot of enabling services also, which help you and ease your pathway for development of your product or technology. So we have incubators. So we have about 64 incubators supported under the BioNIS scheme. Smita had very clearly defined how Venture Center helps you and what are the options that are available at Venture Center for the startups. So these incubators by and large provide incubation space, access to very high-end equipment so that you can carry out your research work, a lot of mentorship, be it technical, marketing, business mentorship is provided to startups by the incubators so that you successfully hit the market at the right time. Besides that, BIRAC has a lot of equity schemes which are run by a couple of selected bio incubators. Venture Center happens to be one of them. So these are the Seed, Leap, and ACE funds. More details, I'm sure Dr. Smita would be able to share with you on these. BIRAC also offers support for IP and technology management under the BIRAC Path scheme. Currently, we entertain only the BIRAC grantees under this scheme to be able to protect your technology, but gradually we will open it up even to the non-supported grantees of BIRAC. The Biotech First Hub, which is a very successful program of BIRAC, where this is a facilitation cell where we have a lot of regulators with us to be able to address your regulatory queries. So this Biotech First Hub committee meets every first Friday of the month, wherein we take up issues which are submitted by our applicants with regard to their product and technology. We have representatives from ICMR, CDSCO, DCGI, and others in this committee, and you are either called to discuss with them your query, or it gets presented by the BIRAC representatives in this committee, and the due recommendations are forwarded to you for necessary action. So this is the impact that BIRAC has created over the years, and there's a lot more that we have not been able to capture on this slide. We have a lot of partners with us, with whom we have been able to make an impact, be it in the area of funding as well as in the area of mentorship. So with this, I would like to end this talk. My email ID is given here. If you have any queries at any time, please feel free to write to us so that we can address any concerns that you may have, be it related to submission of proposals or even otherwise. We are always there and would be happy to help you. Thank you. Over to you, Smita.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sonali Tandon, for that insightful talk. We will take up the question answers very soon. We've received quite a few questions. But before that, I would like to run a small poll of just 30 seconds, a quick one, just to understand our cohort today. So we've launched the poll. All of you are requested to punch in your answers. Select 75%. Yeah. So
I think, Meghna,
yes.
probably we can summarize the results. Basically, our audience has a lot of entrepreneurs, some academicians.
Yes. Yes.
Many have startups already. And of course, SBRI, a lot of questions, a lot of interest, and perhaps all of them, and maybe the other refers to BIG, perhaps, right?
Yes,
okay.
the other references for BIG.
And I think, as Dr. Sonali Tandon said, probably BIG, some of you can attend the other events that are running right now, covering BIG. So Venture Center is also covering that. So maybe we can focus today on I4 and PACE, right, which is SBRI. Hello, Sonali, how are you?
I'm doing good, Dr. Premnath. How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Shall we,
Yes.
Meghna, over to you.
Yes.
So we have compiled all the questions and Meghna is just sharing the sheet.
Okay.
So,
Meghna, do you want me to help you with the questions?
yes.
Okay. By the way, just I request everybody to please continue typing questions. Okay. And then we can compile them. But in the meantime, we'll begin with some of these questions which Meghna has put up as well. But I think before we start with eligibility, somebody had asked about whether the recording or PPT will be available. This recording is being streamed on YouTube, so it will be available on YouTube. So you can see whatever is being discussed there, so that you have Meghna, you can put out the link for people for future reference.
Yes, sir. The YouTube link is put up in the chat box. We'll
Okay.
put it again as well.
Okay, good. So let's go to the eligibility section now, right? So there were a lot of questions, Sonali, which you can take up. Some of them relating to basically eligibility. Can a partnership firm apply? There's one from somebody who was not named.
This is somebody named Dell.
No, that is a computer. So anyway, there's also Deepak who had asked, can a partnership apply? Not LLP, but a partnership registered with ROF. Okay. And for CRS also, there was a question saying, can partnership firm apply? Do you want to address that?
Yeah. So under, so the LLP is eligible, provided the members have Indian shareholding, at least 51% Indian shareholding, as well as you are registered under the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008. I think that's what it is. And you can also watch out on the BIRAC website for the scheme document of SIBRI if any further details are required, or else you can even write to me. But this is what I know. LLP registered under the Partnership Act 2008 is eligible.
Can I just add here, the traditional partnerships which are not eligible under the scheme, neither are the sole proprietorships and so on. It's only LLPs, limited liability partnerships. Okay. Yes. And other than, of course, companies which are registered under Companies Act, right? So there's some more questions relating to primarily if somebody is running a consult. Can I request everybody to go on mute? Meghna, please put everybody on mute.
Yes.
Yeah. Only questions via the chat box, please. So if you wish, please type on the chat box. We'll pick it up. Okay. Can somebody who is running a consulting or a CRO kind of activity apply under one of these one of the BIRAC funding programs? And that's especially if they're working on customized products for patients. So I think the product may not be scalable, Sonali, but it might be something which they're customizing for, say, diabetic patients and so on and so forth. Okay, so it is a basically the question is, if they're customizing things for people, will that be fundable?
So we have implants, customizable implants that we have supported, but these are from startups. From a CRO, I'll have to check on that.
So would you say that in principle, as long as they meet the eligibility
criteria, it should be okay?
Yeah, they can apply, right? Yes. But what they propose in the project might decide whether they'll get selected or not, right?
Yes.
And what the expert committees think about it. Okay. Also, there's also a question relating to trust or society. Can a trust or society apply under the scheme?
Yes, so they are eligible as a collaborator, but not as a primary applicant.
Yeah. So I think this is spelled out in the guidelines as well.
Yes.
We have sent out the links as well. People are requested to also look at it as well. How many times can you apply for an SBRI grant?
Ideally, you can apply till you reach TRL 6. So we have had cases where at least 2 SIBRI grants have been given. One, say, for product optimization and the next for an early stage validation. But it's not being too much encouraged now. So in one shot itself, you're expected to at least reach TRL 6 so that you become eligible for BIPP in the next round.
Yeah, and if a particular product line is successful, can they come back later for another product line?
Of course.
Yeah.
Like I said, the committee is always interested in knowing the history of what has happened to the project, which was earlier supported by BIRAC. So it's good to have a success story. And even if it's not been taken forward, a very valid and a justified reason of why you have not been able to commercialize it.
Yeah. There's a question also about whether if somebody is already having a BIG project ongoing, okay, and for the next phase they want to apply for SBRI, can they apply towards the end of the BIG project?
Of
but
course,
before
that's
it
the
ends?
best. Yeah, that's the best scenario. But we have had cases where 6 months are still left for BIG and we start receiving applications. The committee at that point is not very confident because they don't see the outcomes of BIG coming at that stage. So ideally, if you have 2 or 3 months pending and you have had sufficient data in your hand to be able to convince the committee for the next round of funding, you can apply in that overlapping time frame to us.
Okay, yeah. Somebody else had a question, Anil Sawant, that our startup got a grant from ICAR-IARI under the Raftar scheme. Can we get grant from BIRAC for another product which is under validation?
Yes, of course, you can.
Yeah. So as long as I suppose this 2 grants are not supporting the same scope,
yes,
you should be okay, right?
Yeah.
You are eligible to apply. Yeah. So I think that covers this eligibility questions. Is there anything else, Meghna, in the eligibility thing which I missed out?
So we also had one question from Pradeep Chaudhary. He's asking, is royalty also applicable for ideation stage funding?
Yes, so BIG also, the royalty has now become applicable, but the royalty becomes payable only after the sales of your product start, not at the development part of your product. So only if the sales start, then the royalty payback becomes applicable.
Okay. There's a question from Dr. Lohakare on PACE, which is, can you please elaborate on the eligibility of academic institute in PACE?
So the PACE should be registered or from an under the government and should be accredited by the relevant government bodies. So you can be a public or a private university or an institution. You are eligible to apply under PACE.
Okay. And is there any, I think you have some requirements of the PI also, right?
Yes.
In PACE,
So,
which is quite important.
Yeah. So basically it's just to gain confidence that you have the required expertise. So you should have had an extramural project funded by any government organization in India in the same research area. You should have a first author paper in that same research area, or you could have a patent on the technology that you are already proposing to develop with us. So just to gain confidence that you have the relevant expertise to be able to deliver on the project.
Okay. There is a question from Mr. Devarajan on, do we need DPIIT recognition with Startup India to apply for BIRAC schemes?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So, that's true. Wherever it is required, they mention it. So,
yes.
And those are usually associated with the incubators at times, but not necessarily here. Okay, let's move on. Any other questions, Meghna, on the eligibility side of it?
We have a question from Dr. Preetham Bhardwaj. He says that he's presently not employed. So can he individually submit the project?
You can individually submit under BIG, but under I4 and under I4, we encourage only companies, not individuals.
Yeah, the primary applicant will be an entity, not individual usually. But BIG you can, and that's a good opportunity as well. And BIG call is also open right now, right? Any other questions, Meghna, on eligibility?
Sir, I think Gaurav Batra has asked the same question related to if we are running a BIG grant, can we still apply for SIPRI?
Yeah, I think that is answered.
That's answered.
Yeah, it can be done as long as they can show that they have made enough progress during BIG. And that was the answer that Sonali had given as well. Okay, let's move to the remaining questions as well. There was a question about the grant numbers. Can you reiterate a little bit about what is the maximum grant in different programs in each of these programs? Because this is
Okay,
one
so
question
under BIPP and PACE, there is no ceiling with regard to the overall project cost. Under SIPRI, the first 50 lakhs is given by BIRAC in the form of grant and aid. If your project cost exceeds 50 lakhs, then whatever is over and above 50 lakhs gets equally divided between the applicant and BIRAC. So for example, 1 CR, the same example I'd put, if 1 CR is your project cost under SIPRI, 75 lakhs would be given by BIRAC in the form of grant and aid. 25 lakhs will be expected to be brought in by the company. Under BIPP, the project cost gets equally divided between BIRAC and the applicant. So if your project cost is 1 CR under BIPP, it's 50-50 contribution by both of us, and BIRAC contribution comes in the form of grant and aid. Under PACE, AIR, there is a ceiling of 50 lakhs on the project cost. Whereas in CRS, again, there is no ceiling. And here the grant is given both to the industry as well as the academic partner, with no contribution being expected from either of them.
Okay. There's a question from Dr. Nidhi Chaudhary asking, in case of idea up to TRL 3 or more, if there's an academician, can BIRAC help in finding company partners? If yes, then procedure please. In case of non-BIRAC project, if high-end facilities are required, does BIRAC help?
So we don't have any formal initiative to help you find an industry partner. But then if you write to us, and if we have some supported companies in the similar area, we could at least connect you to them so that then you can have a dialogue and take it forward accordingly.
Okay. Under PACE projects, can multiple researchers apply PI, co-PI for a project?
Yes, so your team you can define. So you will have to have a primary point of contact, which is a principal investigator for us. But then you can have co-PI and your team members also being a part of it. In fact, you can have 2 or 3 different research institutes coming together, provided their need is justified for the proposal that is being submitted to us.
Okay. So there are a few questions which are a little more topic specific. So I'll just put those.
Just one correction about Dr. Batra's question. So his question was actually if he has another product which is not developed under BIG, can he apply for SIPRI?
Yes, you can. Yes, of course you can. BIG to SIPRI transitions we encourage so that the continuity of the product exists. But then we have also had we have a lot of applicants coming to us, irrespective of whether they have received the BIG funding or not.
Yeah. Only thing is that SBRI requires TRL 3.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you need to get
it cannot
to that
be an
point.
idea. Yeah.
Okay. So that is one thing which. Yes, Smita, any other questions, or shall I go to the?
So we have another question from Bala Murugan. He says, what is the maximum grant from BIRAC if we need more fund for project more than 5 crore rupees? BIRAC will help with financial assistance in what way?
So 5 CR, I understand that you may be looking at a late stage validation or a multi-center trial, something of that magnitude. So you become eligible under BIPP in this case. And if it's a 5 CR, you are expected to get half, and we would give you half as granted.
Yeah. And also your that final product commercialization thing is also there, isn't it?
Yeah. So that you are eligible only after you have hit TRL 7. Only TRL 7 and above companies become eligible for the PCP grant.
Yeah. Is there any matching contribution there?
No, there's no matching contribution, but it has very strict payback clauses.
Okay. So there are a few topics which people have asked about, and I thought I'll combine a few of those. The first one is, if they're working on a drug discovery platform, okay, with, they've specify the topic. I want to develop a drug discovery platform as a CRO company with next generation stem cell organoid based technology. Which seed fund or any other grant in aid I can apply for?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. So would you say this is something which they should look at BIG?
So it depends. If they have reached that first step of showing the principle, they could even come under SIBRI. But if it's just as an ideation stage, they could first try for BIG before they approach SIBRI.
Yeah. Let me also add here that seed funding typically comes in a little later. Although BIRAC seed allows the seed funding little earlier, usually seed funding comes up after you have reached and hit certain milestones. So usually grant in aid is the way to go in the early stage.
Early stages.
Yeah. So the sequence which Sonali mentioned, BIG, SBRI, BIPP, may be the way to go for you as well. Another question on a topic specifically, Gautam Dandikar asks, can you please tell under which scheme will sleep correction technology or therapy in equipment form come? So therapy in equipment form, right? And POC is ready.
So if POC is ready, I would guess you're eligible for SIBRI because you may want to do some validation before you roll it out. So you could either check out SIBRI or BIPP depending upon the scope.
Yeah. There's one more on similar lines, which, we have 100% biodegradable sanitary napkin, which BIRAC scheme will be eligible for apply.
So you could check out SIBRI in this case also, but I would need more details on what stage you are to be able to tell you more specifically.
Yeah. While you're at this, I'll also add that there are many people who have such products, right? So you please look carefully at the criteria which Dr. Sonali Tandon mentioned in selection, and please craft your application accordingly to demonstrate what is different, what is new, how it will be different from existing solutions as well, right? Okay, there are questions on royalties. Furthermore, does it have some timelines?
No, it's you start off with your sales and you pay back till you have paid back the entire grantee made.
Yeah. Can a private limited company which is running, I think that's covered. Sorry about that. So there's a question also about if a project is selected in DBT's CCAMP's Attract Life Science program and waiting for a company partner, can BIRAC help directly or some way to CCAMP?
I guess we would encourage our own grantees for this, but then you could write to us and see if we could help you out with that.
Yeah, no, I think what they're trying to I think the difficulty is finding the industry partner, and probably is there some way by which one can do it? So there are, by the way, there are many opportunities where you get to showcase your technology. BIRAC runs them as well, where you can actually present and be visible to industry partners. That's a good way to do it, or perhaps you can consider those as well.
So one more thing, just to add on, Dr. Prevnath. So we have launched the Biotech Showcase portal, which was very recently inaugurated by our PM. So you can give your information to be posted on that portal also. We expect companies and other partners to be looking at that portal and trying to hunt for technologies which they want to take forward or they may want to partner with. So you could try doing that. You could write to us and we could upload your information on that portal.
Yes. Somebody had asked about the specific criteria and all of that, criteria for submitting. I think we have gone through that, so I'll not take time there. We should probably close this session. Smita, please tell me how much time we have and we can just go with that.
Actually, we are running late. We can take one or three questions. Yeah. So I think one question is from a student. He's been applying again and again, but he's still pursuing BTech 4th year. So he gets rejected by BIG and BIRAC. So I think he needs to complete and look at some fellowship programs maybe. So Harsh, you can connect separately with us to get more information on fellowship programs, which would be more relevant for students. And we would be happy to guide you.
All government programs will have specific eligibility criteria and you need to meet that. if you have not finished your degree and if that's a requirement, they will not take you to the next stage. So please keep that in mind. Yeah.
So,
Please go ahead.
yeah, one last question is by Krishnan about global clinical trials. So, which program would support clinical trials, and is there any cap for that?
Yes.
So clinical trials, both for agri as well as other projects, other products get supported under BIPP because these are high budget things. So you can apply under the BIPP scheme for the clinical validation.
Yeah, and
I think we have covered a lot of ground. So hopefully, let's go ahead with the next segment. Sonali, if you're available, please stay.
Yeah, but before we move to the next segment, I request our panelists and our speakers to kindly switch on their cameras for a quick photo. Over to you, Meghna.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sonali, and thank you, Dr. Premnath, for moderating this question answer session. Next, we have planned an entrepreneurs panel wherein we have our previous grantees. They'll be sharing their tips and pointers with all of us. So let me begin by introducing Dr. Premnath. He'll be moderating this session. He's the Director of Venture Center and Head of NCL Innovations. He's also responsible for championing the cause of technology innovation with NCL. He's the founding director of BC, is a scientist, polymer science and engineering division at NCL, with an interest in technology development for biomedical products. He holds his BTech from IIT Bombay and PhD from MIT, US. He has also been a Chevening Technology Enterprise Fellow with the Center for Scientific Enterprises, London Business School and Cambridge University, UK. He brings with him considerable experience in technology development and commercialization, working with startup companies and engaging with large corporations on research and consulting projects as project leader. We have two entrepreneurs in this panel. First up is Gitanjali Radhakrishnan. She is the CEO and MD of Edivo Diagnostics Private Limited. She's a bioengineer who's worked in research and then as a software developer. Hailing from the hills where access to healthcare is at least 100 kilometers away, she felt that her bioengineering background would be better utilized to develop healthcare solutions for low resource settings. She founded Edivo Diagnostics in 2015 with a vision to bring high-end diagnostics more accessible to healthcare settings in India. She is Ignite 2017 Fellow at Judge Business School, Cambridge. Edivo has developed a patented multispectral imaging technique combined with AI engine to aid in reagent-less rapid diagnosis that can be applied in range of diseases starting from infections to cancer. One more thing I would like to add here is she's one of those lucky people who got to interact with the Prime Minister at the BIRAC Expo this year. And next up, we have Dr. Anuya Nisal. She is the principal scientist at CSIR-NCL and the founder for Serigen Mediproducts. She has her PhD in chemical engineering from IIT Mumbai, master's in material science and engineering from University of Delaware, US. At NCL, she leads a group performing in scientific research in the areas of polymers, biomaterials, medical devices, and tissue engineering via several research grants. Serigen is the winner of several prestigious awards, including 9th National Award for Technology Innovation in Polymers in Public Healthcare 2019 and 2020, and the national winner of Empower TIE Women Global Competition in 2021. She is also the recipient of several such interesting awards. And I'll welcome both of you to this panel, and over to you.
Yeah, so before we start with the discussion, I request Gitanjali to kindly talk about her company and share her experiences, and then Dr. Anuya would be talking about her company and her experience and insights of CIPI and BIPP, and then I request Dr. Prerna to start with the Q&A.
Okay. So is there a time limit? Maybe 5 minutes is okay if I take?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, please.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks again for inviting me. I hope I added value for all of you who are going to apply for CIBRI and BIPP. I hope you can see my slides. Otherwise,
yes, please go full screen.
Yeah. Perhaps stop my video temporarily. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Adivu is mainly into diagnostics, and we are currently a 24-member team. We were founded 2015, and BIRAC was our first. BIRAC grant and BIRAC, all the project, the different schemes under BIRAC supported us throughout, I would say, and they've been an integral part of our funding journey, mentorship, and various other regulatory aspects that we have brought into the company. BIRAC was crucial. And we have right now a ISO 13485 facility, and when we have impact investors on our board. I'm a bioengineer by background, and my co-founder is from optoelectronics background as well, and we have a clinical advisory board. The problem we are targeting is mainly into the wound care segment, where we look at ways to understand infections rapidly without using any sampling technique. And we target different segments, from surgical site infections to burns to diabetic foot ulcers to neonatal pediatry as well. So the product that you can see here, what we have is the result is a handheld device where you see a wound, you click images, capture multispectral images, and tell you within 2 minutes where it is infected and also the gram type of organism that is present. So it's basically, it brings down the wound healing cost and also the treatment time by early detection of infections. And precisely, the device combines multispectral imaging and also artificial intelligence. So why I'm giving this background is for out there who are into both hardware and also a little artificial intelligence or machine learning integrated into your this is how we had approached for CIBRI and post our BIG. So BIG we mainly use towards of course setting up of proof of concept, but CIBRI is towards doing a multicentric clinical trial with good journals or publications that are outcomes of those clinical trials. And we do have marquee hospitals who have adopted it. And this is how I had structured my CIBRI. So I had applied for CIBRI 1 month prior to BIG completion. And the main milestones to a minimal viable prototype, I would say. I want to assemble, make 5 of these devices, and it would require a setup of an ISO 13485 facility with all the technical dossiers in place. The prototype has to be industrial design ready, and it has to be designed for manufacturing. So I used the first milestone when I applied specifically for this purpose. The second was, once I have the devices ready, I had precisely wanted to do a multicentric clinical trial. So initially we had projected a certain number of patients as part of that, but CIBRI helped us fine tune it, and we had arrived at a 800 patient, where we had a training phase as one set of the sub milestone and testing phase another milestone. And the last was market pilot, because since it was an AI enabled device, we also wanted to test it on different settings, from burns to diabetic foot ulcers to surgical site infections. So this is in short about my company and also the SIBRI, how I had positioned. Thanks and happy to take questions post the panel discussion.
Thank you, Geetanjali. I think we'll now request Anuya to talk a little bit about her own projects and how she has got them supported through BIRAC support and how it has helped her take ideas ahead.
Thanks, Dr. Premnath. Smita, can you allow me to share my screen, please? It's saying it's disabled.
Yes, just a moment.
Yeah, now you can do it. Try it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So good morning, everyone. And thanks to the Venture Center team for giving me this opportunity to talk about how we have benefited from various grants from BIRAC. So I'm Anuya, I'm the founder of Serigen Mediproducts. And very quickly, I'll tell you about what we do at Serigen. So this is the founding team of Serigen. I am a PhD in chemical engineering by training, and Dr. Premnath is also a co-founder on the company. While both of us are chemical engineers, Dr. Swati, who is our third founder, brings in the complementary skill sets from the life sciences domain. So what we do here is we work on this platform technology called as Seri technology. So this is silkworm silk that we use. Now, as we all know, silk has been used for several decades as a textile material. It's known for its luster, its shine. But silk thread has also been used to stitch wounds. So silk-based sutures were developed more than 100 years ago by Johnson & Johnson company, global medical company. And today there are more than 100 companies, both in India as well as globally, who supply these sterile silk-based sutures in the market. What has changed in the last 2 decades is the ability to convert this silk into a solution. And at Serigen, we have developed novel and innovative processing protocols by which we can convert this silk solution into very unique 3-dimensional products where we have a control on the porosity, the control on mechanical properties, the control on how this material would degrade in the body, and so on and so forth. So the work has been published in some of the best international journals, and we also have the technology protected by patents. So based on this platform technology, Serigen currently has 3 product portfolios that we are working on. And we have been supported since our inception with various BIRAC grants. So Serios, which is our flagship product, is a material that can be used to fill cavities that are formed in the bone, either due to accidents, trauma, or infections. For Serios, we were the recipient of a BIG grant early on for product development stage. This was very early, from idea to prototype stage. We had a follow-up BIPP grant actually on Serios, which enabled us to complete some of our pilot animal studies. So we did some of the animal studies using the BIPP grant. And currently we have an ongoing SBRI grant from BIRAC, which is supporting our clinical validation of Serios for the first 10 patients. Our second product, SeriMat, which is also based on the Seri technology, is a material that can be used in soft tissue regeneration. So the first target market here is in breast cancer. For SeriMat as well, we have had 2 grants from BIRAC that we have completed, which is the first grant, SBRI 1, was a small 25 lakh grant, which is currently not there with the BIRAC portfolio, but it was earlier available. So using this 25 lakhs, we were able to build a prototype that could be used in soft tissue regeneration. And this was then supported with a SIBRI 2 grant, where we completed our animal studies and completed the safety studies in animals for the samples. So just a few pointers for what has helped us when we have done different BIRAC grants throughout is, when we define or when we decide to write a proposal in our in the Serigen team, what we do is we essentially first prepare a very crisp slide deck of 8 to 10 slides, which is then later converted into the proposal. And here we focus on very nicely defining the problem in just one single slide. What is the solution that we are offering? what is the novelty or the value proposition that we bring vis-a-vis some of the existing alternatives, which is essentially your competition. We define what is going to be the objective that is going to be part of this proposal. What are the timelines that we are going to take? What is the budget in terms of consumables, in terms of manpower, in terms of any equipments which are very crucial towards completing the project. And we also split the budget depending on what is something that the company will support, the company funds contribution will support, and what would come from BIRAC. In addition to that, we also put together a slide on path forward where we define till what, so let's say you, in a medical product, for example, you're going from an idea stage to the animal studies through clinical trials and regulatory, right? So it should clearly define what support you're asking for, which area or which region of your product development, and then how would you take it forward. So as Dr. Sonali was mentioning, that you actually, they would want to see, BIRAC would like to see whether you have the vision or some understanding about the regulations of commercializing this product, although you are at an early stage before. It has also helped to very precisely define quantitative milestones, as what also Gitanjali shared in her presentation. So if you're, if you have a milestone which says that you're going to recruit 5 patients towards a clinical trial, then there is no, it's very easy for BIRAC also or the committee also to assess whether you have achieved the milestone. So defining very crisp and clear milestones is one other thing that has helped. In case now, especially during COVID times or in other circumstances, if you see that you're not going to be able to achieve a timeline or a milestone and you need to change that, we have always approached BIRAC beforehand and have communicated our difficulty in achieving the milestone and have requested for reorganization of milestones. And I think this has also helped us immensely to complete the projects on time and as committed. And lastly, we also generally plan for the company contribution. Although you need not have the entire amount of money right at day one, but you should also have a plan about how you are going to inject and where you're going to raise those funds from. So I think that was a very small introduction, and happy to talk more about the BIRAC funds. Thanks.
Thank you, Gitanjali and Dr. Anuya, for your lovely presentations.
Thank you. I think we'll now start the questions. What I wanted to do was pick on a few themes and then request you to talk through that as well, right? So Anuya, if you were to think through where you would use, say, BIG, I mean, as advice to others, where you would use BIG versus SBRI versus BIPAP in practice, what would you advise people?
Yeah, so let me talk a little about medical products, since that is my area of expertise. But essentially for prototyping, from idea stage to prototyping is where you go with the BIG grant. SBRI grant typically helps you after that, where you have a prototype and you're doing some testing on the prototype. SBRI grant of 50 lakhs to 1 CR generally helps to cover that stage. BIPP is then helpful for doing your clinical trials. It could be pilot as well as pivotal. And sometimes you can also use a CBRI to complete. So it could be a follow-up CBRI grant to do a pilot clinical trial and then go to BIPP for pivotal trial.
Yeah. Also, as you go to the right in terms of funding programs, we need to plan for, matching funds, right? Do you have any comments on when people should start planning for that, or how they should look at it, and what are some best practices according to you?
So for BIG, it is an entire grant funding. If you are a medtech product developer, you could look at having a CBRI grant, which is up to 50 lakhs, which means that the entire tranche is then covered by BIRAC. But if that kind of funding is going to help you advance your technology, that does help. In terms of 50 lakh support as a complementary funding to what BIRAC is giving, some seed funds are good options to look at an early stage. Especially because bringing on investors at that early stage and giving away equity at that stage could turn out to be more costlier. So at the second SIBRI or the BIPP stage is where I think you should start looking at angel investment to complement some of the money that you're raising through BIRAC. And I think beyond that, it could be VC funding or TCP kind of grants that BIRAC has.
Okay. Geetanjali, I think, you've made a lot of progress starting with BIG and so on. So I wanted to take just a few minutes to also talk about that. When you got started, you were, relatively fresh from college and doing all of that. And BIG also, I think you ran into rough weather in the beginning and so on. So I wanted you to talk to especially the younger folks here who might be struggling with BIG and other such funding programs, early stage funding programs, on what you think can be, how you can build sort of a credible story, and how do you navigate through reasons why people might refuse to give a grant in the very beginning, right?
Sure. So the first and foremost, which is very important, is having.
Geetanjali, your sound is breaking up, so maybe you can cut off video and stay with sound.
Sure.
Try that.
Okay, now it's better.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So very important when I started was having at least one or two mentors along with yourself when you apply. The mentors can be one from a technical background and another from a clinical background. And this would help to gain some amount of credibility when we are pitching our proposal to the committee. Of course, the clinical mentor can add in values. Hello.
Sorry, I think there was some disturbance. I request everybody to go on mute, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that would add some credibility, and also having we were incubated early on with an impact investor group. So we had access where we spoke to at least a couple of hospitals to really pitch in with a supportive statement saying so many hospitals feel infection assessment on wounds is very important. So that is how we brought in a lot of credibility, or I brought in a lot of credibility when I first applied for BIG. For SIBRI, of course, since it was follow on, having an understanding of which all clinical partners we want to partner with and having ethics committee approvals cleared at an early stage really helped me to talk to the committee with much more confidence, and more favorable they look at you in terms of what you propose. I hope that answered the query, Trivnath,
Yeah, sure.
But if anything,
also, do you want to comment upon what kind of issues come up during review, and what are the kind of focus areas that the committee focuses on, and also during the presentation, what are the kind of issues that are looked at with scrutiny during your review process? Sure.
So since we were combining microbiology with optoelectronics and also AI, we have to answer the queries with a microbiologist who comes with their background. They do ask a lot of queries technically, which is very sound, and they talk more in terms of how we are going to show it in our early studies. So understanding how many sets of data are required in your proof of concept is very important. Understanding the different mechanisms and pathway and biomarkers, why you have chosen this, again, is a very big thing. And it has to be proven or supported by having good amount of research articles is very important. And next was with respect to sample size. Since again, we had AI in our place to ensure how we arrived at a particular sample size, have some amount of reasoning behind it, statistical techniques that we used. And also you can bring in mentors, of course, to support that. Not just you talking about it, but at least someone, a mentor as well, supporting what you have just explained to the committee. So that is very important.
Anuya, when you are pitching for, say, SBRI, for example, how much of the focus is on technical soundness of the idea and credibility of that versus how much of detailing you have done of the pathway to the market versus the business opportunity? Like, out of these three, which one do you think the focus is on? Do they look for gaps specifically in these?
So for us, for most of the SIBRI projects, these were follow-on projects for the BIG funding that we already had. So if you already have a successfully completed BIG, there we have seen that the focus more was on how are you taking it forward, what clarity do you have in terms of the regulatory challenges, and what is going to be your path forward in terms of raising funds and so on. For our second product, when we did SIBRI at a very initial stage, which was not supported through a BIG grant, there we did see that the discussion was a lot focused on innovation, how whether potential to file an IP, is there, how are you going to compete? So that discussion was more focused on understanding the technical aspects of the presentation as well.
Okay. Gitanjali, how did you go about figuring out your regulatory pathway? Because that becomes a big issue, right? And people who have not thought through it often are treated as an academic project, which is not really serious about commercializing. So can you comment on that?
Sure. So we did attend a number of these, both Venture Center had organized for a number of regulatory meetings, and also BIRAC have their own regulatory cell and a particular timing where you can speak to them in understanding what is required. So 3 years back, what suggestions we got out of it was to obtain a no objection certificate, which is no longer valid. So we did go to the CDSCO in Delhi, applied for a certificate to get a no objection, and then we had a consultant again, and also we took some help with the Venture Center's regulatory cell as well to understand what was required. So based on that, whatever is needed for a medical device, we listed it out. We put it in our proposal as well, because there is a separate column for regulatory, what all is required. And there's no escaping from that column, because we recently applied for BIPP and we got shortlisted, and it's gruesome. So it's very good that they help us, really think through even something that I've not thought through. So that is to be a little bit candid about it. But yes, it's extremely important, especially because I also want to apply for an FDA. So these kind of regulatory things in place and having an understanding and talking to the BIRAC team about it is very helpful. And of course, they do give in a lot of suggestions on have you missed this particular compliance testing, device testing, safety testing. That also helps us, go back, present back to the team. Yeah.
Okay. In planning, say, some of your SBRI work. By the way, Anuya, I think you also had a case where probably SBRI you got something where there was no BIG earlier, isn't it? So you had to generate some of the data enough to get to TRL level 3 and then present it, right, as a case for taking it ahead as well. And there were also some where probably you have also pitched for BIPP, for example, right? So do you have a few list of few things which one, especially if somebody is going for clinical trials or field trials in agriculture or clinical trials, can you indicate what are the few things people should plan for in order to do a good job of the BIPP application?
Yeah, so for a BIPP application, and especially if you're doing it for a clinical trial, I think budgeting it appropriately and writing the objectives down very clearly helps a lot. In order to do that, I think the first steps that we did was to talk to hospitals. So decide on which hospitals are going to be part of your clinical trials. it was helpful to actually have ethics committee approvals from at least a couple of hospitals when we wrote the clinical trial protocol, and the fact that the ethics committee has also approved the clinical trial protocol. We also had budgetary requirements that were given by the CRO with whom we were working for our clinical trials. So very precise budgets on what would be the cost per patient that the company would have to bear, what would be the fees that we are going to pay to the CROs. So any such budgetary quotes is definitely helpful in convincing about what kind of budget you need and why you need it for the because the questions typically in a grant proposal like this are about what is the number of patients that you're going to recruit and what is going to be the cost. So if you have clarity on these 2 points, and if there is an ethics committee that has actually approved something like that, I think that has helped immensely in defending and getting the proposal right.
So that basically means that people should have done their detailed study design, got their ethical committee, so they will have to pass it to CDSCO, because the ethical committee would also need that to see that, right? They would need a PI identified, they would need a study design figured out.
No, so CDSCO approval comes after you submit the provisional approval from an ethics committee of an hospital. So at least that is minimum required. After that, you go to CDSCO, you apply, you present to CDSCO, and there could be certain modifications that CDSCO would allow. But by then, you're parallelly also talking to BIRAC to finalize on the proposal. So at least an hospital ethics committee approval is definitely required if you want BIRAC to consider, and that has helped us significantly.
Yeah. Is it important that the PI is identified, and
Yes.
is also was it required that, is it useful if the PI is present at the presentation?
Yeah, so the ethics committee approval comes after the PI is identified and the PI has presented to the ethics committee of the hospital.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, this is the PI of the clinical trial, not PI of the BIRAC project.
Yeah.
Okay.
The doctor who is going to do your clinical studies, you must identify, talk to him. He should approve of the entire protocol, and he will essentially present it to the ethics committee of the hospital, saying that this is the protocol that I would follow. So the role here for the company is only to supply the materials and also to cover some of the costs of the clinical trial. So once you have done all of this, I think there is enough confidence in the BIRAC committee that you can successfully implement the trial.
Okay. In all of these, when you're executing these projects itself, right? Are there some best practices, Geetanjali, in making sure that you're hitting all the targets, managing your money well, and making sure that your reporting is adequate, so that BIRAC is able to process documents a little better?
Yes, absolutely. So if we need to really be sure if this particular strategy does not work. For example, we had given 800 patient study in 3 hospitals. It's always better we have a 4th hospital ready, because if we are not able to meet the target of 800 patients, we always have a 4th hospital to do it. So it's just an alternate strategy. Again, when it comes to, let's say, regulatory approvals, there may be delays, and ensuring that how you get through that delays, which is not in your control, is again very important. So structuring the milestones are extremely important. For example, when we do a medical device, we would put pre-compliance testing, which is needed before we start a clinical validation, as milestone 1. We will have a clinical validation as milestone 2, and we'll put the toughest one where you have to file all the compliance testing, which is not dependent on the clinical validation, in milestone 3. So we have the sufficient cushion in order to achieve that particular milestone is important.
Yeah. So in this context, I should mention that BIRAC's fundings are always installment based, and they're linked to milestones and your ability to spend and arrange the money that you're committed as well, right? So at every milestone, there'll be some targets which you're meeting, and you're also expected to show the corresponding spending that is needed. So it is important that people stay along with the, learn to plan that very well in terms of milestones and so on and so forth. Meghna, how much time do we have? I don't want to go over.
10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So last segment that we have, I also wanted to discuss a few other things, which is that, see, BIRAC funding supports your technology journey, right? It doesn't necessarily support, say, your marketing, your manufacturing, and all of those kind of things, which will come post that. So question number one is, how broadly are you considering to fund that? And number two, how much of that is needed to be informed to when you're writing, say, a BIPP proposal? Because do they want to know also what is your path ahead and how you will raise money for the rest of your commercialization journey? Anuya?
Yeah, so I think, but as you mentioned, BIRAC funding mainly comes for the technical and till you complete the regulatory. Broadly speaking, I think we have always had one slide, as I mentioned, about till where this BIRAC support is going to end and what is the path forward for the for the product line or development or commercialization of that. And broadly, we have mentioned about how we will raise funds through angels, or there could be VC rounds that we plan to do and something like that. But BIRAC does not look into much details about how you will go further beyond that project, as far as you have at least some clarity about how you're going to progress in that area. For us, yes, we have supported the path forward mainly through angel investment so far. And we are planning to do another angel round and a VC round sometime next year to take us through the commercialization stage, while we'll also evaluate other options such as a PCP fund and so on.
How about you, Geetanjali?
Yeah, so I have a slightly look on this. So we
sorry, you're breaking up. Do you have a slight better position where sound is better? Yeah, go ahead. Try it again. No, Geetanjali, we can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, now it's better. Yeah, now it's good. Yeah.
So we had a slightly different experience with our technical committee members. They also wanted to understand how, because it's a new technology, how it actually impacts different settings. So we did to do some market pipe.
Sorry, we are losing you again.
Like
yeah, maybe Anuya, both of us can cut off our video and see if it works better. Yeah. Or yeah, go ahead now, Geetanjali, try it. Geetanjali, can you hear us? Can't hear you. Hello? Okay, while Geetanjali is sorting, yeah, go ahead, try, let's try. Heard you.
To keep it short, we did get some support where we can do a market pilot on 10 hospitals, which is to explore how this particular technology is adding value to the clinical protocol. So CIBRI did support our last milestones, where we also put these devices in 10 hospitals, and we also give them outcomes like wound healing outcomes, different patient outcomes using this device, because that is very important, especially for a newer technology, and they do support that.
Okay, so here, first of all, there are questions coming up, but I'll just take them up in a little while. I wanted to first ask you both, were there any, I mean, I don't need you to go into specifics, but if you take the most difficult part of your presentation and where, the reviewers say were not convinced or were wanted more information and so on and so forth, can you mention if it was technical or whatever it was broadly, and how you went about addressing those reasons for refusal or reasons for making that primary sort of criteria for selecting or not. Anuya? I think in your case it would be technical, right?
It was technical, yes.
Yeah.
So I think the technology that we are working on, for example, silk is for the first time being used in such deep tech medical devices, apart from being used in sutures. And globally, there is not a company that had reported, using silk in bone repair. So during the initial stages, yes, we did have a lot of questions from the committee about why we think that silk would be safe, and how are we going to prove that, and what kind of tests, or either in vitro or in animal studies, that we could do. So going forward, I think we used to include a slide with a literature review of what the current academic literature on silk in medical devices and tissue regeneration talks about. And we also had very clearly defined tests as per a global ISO standard, which helped us, validate some of the toxicity related questions for silk. So yeah, I think that was the toughest part for us.
How about you, Geetanjali?
Yeah, it was again technical and also understanding of the use case. So it's always better to have backup slides where if you have to go very technical and have, pathways, circles, research article mentions, it will really help the technical committee members to understand easily in that limited time of 10 minutes that they give you. So technical is the hardest. You have to ensure you reach what you're telling to them very clearly, because people come from different background, and if you are presenting 2 or 3 kind of which combines micro, AI and all of that, you need to ensure that it reaches each of them clearly. So refining the pitch and having those backup slides are very important. And important thing is they will definitely look for a clinical advisor or a mentor, a physician, whoever is your end customer, your doctors should be on your board, or you should mention them very clearly, because that I have seen as being the prerequisite a number of times when I present it.
Yeah, they definitely want to understand from first-hand from people who are going to use it, whether it makes sense or not, right? Is the need real or not, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, so we'll go to questions now, a few brief questions. First of all, there was a question on, whether many of the funding, many of the funds are directed towards the medical industry only. No, BIRAC defines biotech very broadly. There's a lot of coverage. Anything to do with life sciences and bio does get covered, not only in the healthcare space, but also in agriculture, food, nutrition, energy, environment, and many other domains wherever biotech is applied. And also a lot of things which are not classical biotech are also covered under the biotech's scope in BIRAC's mandate. So you can apply. Please, you feel you should decide to try out and see whether that works out for you or not. Also, there is, I think, are there any specific questions for Anuya and Geetanjali, or we'll open the floor to other questions as well? Meghna, are there any specific questions which has come to you?
Yes, there is a question by Gunjan. She is asking, what about product, test license and manufacturing license and class of device with required documents? Have you cleared it or achieved it? So
how you did that? That's what she's asking. Yeah. So it's more about regulatory approvals and so on and so forth. Yeah. Anuya, do you want to say how broadly, without in terms of in a generic sense, how do entrepreneurs who are taking products to market plan that out? And then I'll request Geetanjali to do the same.
Yeah. So I think for the regulatory of medical devices, the medical device rules, which is a PDF document of about 150 pages, I think it is important to go through various sections of that and try and read between the lines over there, trying to classify your device. What has definitely helped is connecting with regulators. So various incubators, including Venture Center, organizes some of these events where you have an opportunity to talk to drug regulators themselves. And insights from them have been extremely useful for us in deciding what is the right time to apply for a product test license or the manufacturing license and so on. The third is we have also consulted with First Hub, which is what Dr. Sonali mentioned in her presentation, and it's facilitated by BIRAC, where it's again an interaction about your query with the regulators. So that has helped us as well. In general, I would say that getting a product test license as early as possible. So once you have a relatively good prototype established, before doing any testing, especially if you're doing animal testing or any other testing that you're going to outsource, it is important to have a product test license. So once you test your products after you receive the test license, it always helps because that data then needs to be submitted when you are applying either for a manufacturing license or for a clinical trial. So I would urge all entrepreneurs to do that ASAP. As soon as your prototype is ready, you apply for a test license so that all your testing gets qualified. Manufacturing license, of course, if your product does not need clinical trials, the first thing to do that is to talk to, depending on the classification of the device, it's either going to be the manufacturing license is given to you either from the state FDA or the central FDA. So if it's, so figure that out. So first classification, figure out which, where you fall. And before even you start designing your manufacturing facility, it is important to talk to the regulatory body and understand what are their requirements in terms of a manufacturing facility, because not all requirements are mentioned in the clinical medical device rules. So it is helpful to talk to them, understand, and then start working on your manufacturing license document.
Yeah. Over to you, Gitanjali.
Yeah, so since ours was medical device, till October, we can do a mandatory CDSCO registration, which we had done after understanding what is required. And we have an ISO 13485. It was, so when I applied for BIPP recently, we did tell them the pathway where we are going to get the manufacturing state authority manufacturing license for Class B device. So we did have that clarity on how we are going to approach and what timelines we are going to do to achieve that.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a question also on IP related issues. What kind of support can BIRAC give for IP? Did you use any of that? There's also a question whether they'll help in supporting defending IPs. Well, the answer is it's up to the company to do it. It's not BIRAC only funds you to file your own IP, and you'll have to protect it. They will not be involved in defending your IP. But anyway, there are some tech transfer offices which BIRAC has set up at different places, and they may be able to help you on a case-to-case basis, but that again depends upon so I will also send out a link to that as well. But while Anuya and Gitanjali give their inputs on how they planned out their IP or what they want to do with the IP, or especially Gitanjali can comment on that. I will also point out that there are links to the First Hub and RIFC and Venture Center, which I have put in the chat box. Okay, and Smita has put down an email address as well. Over to you, Gitanjali. Do you want to say how you went about planning your IP, supporting it, funding it? And did you take any help as yet from BIRAC on it?
Yeah, so we had a separate IP filed as part of DIG, and we always knew when we finished SIBRI, we would be filing 3 other as well. Of course, we need to, since this particular market had a lot of new entrants coming in, we need to have a more stronger IP. So I did not take BIRAC support for this. But we did mention in our proposals very clearly which IP is what we're going to use in the SIBRI and the BIPP around it. And of course, we do a number of defending ourselves. BIRAC do support it, but it again depends on the company whether they want to take it up on themselves or they want to ask BIRAC for help.
Yeah, BIRAC's help is mainly funding related. So you can see this link which I put up called Path for especially their grantees. They can support some of the foreign filings and so on and so forth. But your the prosecution and so on and so forth, you will have to identify, you'll have to do yourself as a company, and you have to plan some funds for that as well. Yeah, so the path, the amount of funding depends upon, you have to build the case basically and present it, and then they support it. And this is primarily useful for foreign filings especially. And so you have to present the case to BIRAC at least 6 months in advance. It's better to go to them and tell them this is what we would like to do as far as foreign filings are concerned. Some of you who might be associated with Venture Center as well, and also just for your information, there's something called TechX, which Venture Center runs, which is a TTO supported by BIRAC and NBM. And there is a program by which, under which some amount of support is done for patents, especially the statutory filings, PCT and Indian filings. Okay, so I think with that we are almost close to the end. I don't want to take too much time of Geetanjali and Anuya. Can you come back on video, please? Yeah. Okay. So I thank you, Geetanjali. Thank you, Anuya, for taking the time out. We covered a few points. I hope that will be useful. And I think many other points have been covered by Sonali as well. So let me thank everybody for taking the time out, and especially for talking a little bit about your own experiences with BIPP and SBRI, which is very useful. So currently, just to conclude, calls for SBRI, BIPP, PACE are all open, and BIG is also open. So if anybody wants to apply, please go ahead and apply. It's you can, but do read the scheme document carefully. Try to fit into the scheme document. There are various places in India who can support your application, thinking through the application and so on and so forth. And if you need to do deep dive into your business planning and so on and so forth, which is an important part of innovation funding, please take the help of incubators in different locations. And this is, please remember, this is innovation financing. That means it's for technology commercialization, taking it to market. This is not research funding for basic research and so on and so forth. Okay. So I think with that, I'll close this session, and I'll give it back to Meghna and Smita to conclude this event. Thank you, Anuya. Thank you, Geetanjali. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining today. We would also like to thank our guest speaker, Dr. Sonali Tandon, and our lovely entrepreneurs, Dr. Anuya and Geetanjali, and all our participants. Before closing, would just like to request all participants to share your feedback. Your feedback is very valuable for us. It keeps us going. So please take out 2 minutes, and I've shared the feedback form link in the chat box. Please provide us your feedback.
And if your questions have not been answered, you can please write to us, to me or to Premnath, and we'll make sure we answer your questions. Also for BIG, I have posted in the chat box BIG team details at Venture Center, their email address and phone numbers. Please feel free to reach to us. The call is open now to 16th of August. And even for SIBRI, BIPP, if you're looking for mentoring, we'd be happy to help you. So thank you once again. Thank you, Dr. Anuya and Geetanjali. Thank you, Dr. Premnath, and thank you to all the participants for their active participation. We'll keep this live for a few minutes till people find the link for feedback and fill the form.
And we'll then close.
Yeah.
I'm trying to answer a couple of questions that
Yes.
came up, right?
Yeah.
So I've already answered. People can look up on the chat box.
Yes.
Okay.
towards the end, there were questions.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Those who have shared their feedback can leave this meeting. Rest of you, please share your feedback with us. Thank you.